I want to start by recognizing that the land we're gathering on today is the territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, the Chippewa, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. And that Toronto is still home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed by the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with many Mississauga and Chippewa bands. We want to recognize that we are on this land today because it was occupied. The Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island have always been on the forefront of protecting the environment, yet they face the most harshest consequences of climate change. As we gather here to talk about climate crisis, it's our responsibility to honor their fight and remember our colonial history and recommit ourselves to decolonization.
Okay, so hi everyone. I want to welcome you guys to Earl Haig's strike for climate change. We're striking today to show that climate change is important and it's something that the citizens and the government of this city need to deal with. Across the globe today, many people are standing up for what they believe is right. But did you know that most of these people are teenagers? Teenagers just like us who are stepping out of our classes because it's been left for us to deal with. Generation after generation have been passing this role down, and we finally have the guts and the minds to do something. Today, we gather as a community as one front to show the government as a whole that they need to do something about this. It's disappointing they've ignored it. It's disappointing that they don't care enough about our future. It's disappointing that time and time again we're teaching them, having to make them recognize where they have gone wrong. And it's disappointing that we have to be here today in the first place.
We stand on the brink of a global catastrophe. A couple of years ago, we had 12 years to clean up our planet, to reduce carbon emissions. Now, we have 15 months. 15 months to make major political change before we have passed the critical threshold. And ladies and gentlemen, once that happens, there is no going back. If we fail to make significant changes, irreversible damage will happen. It will be a snowball effect. Already the changes that are happening to our planet are visible. Our sea levels are rising. Our great glaciers are melting and falling into the sea. Countless millions of animals are losing their homes.
Our Earth's on fire!
Our Earth is on fire. Have you guys heard about Hurricane Dorian?
Yes!
It just ravaged the Bahamas. I don't know if you know this, but hurricanes are graded on a scale from 1 to 5 in intensity. Hurricane Dorian has just been classified as a scale 6 tornado. They have had to reclassify the way we think about hurricanes, because it has never been seen, these high levels of winds and the destruction from this hurricane before. I don't know about you guys, but that's scary to me. The time for thoughts and prayers is over. Now we fight, which brings me to you. As I look out over this crowd, I see the future leaders of not just our country, but of the world. We are the inheritors of the earth. But unless we do something about the global climate change catastrophe that's happening, there will be no earth to inherit. I know this is scary. It is easy to become apathetic. It is easy to lose hope. It is easy to believe that we have no power. After all, it's what we've been told for years. To sit down quietly, let the adults do the talking, wait our turn. To that I say, our time is now, their time is over. The older generations have proven to us that they cannot be counted on to make reliable, major, and systemic change to our systems. That is why it falls on every person in front of me now, every young person on the planet, to make our voices heard. Each and every single one of you holds more power than you realize. This coming federal election will be the first time that millennials and Gen Z will outnumber baby boomers in voting population. We have the power for the first time. The upcoming provincial election in a few years, almost every single one of you standing before me will be of voting age. And you know what? They are scared of that. They're scared shitless, and they should be.
Screw them for. Yo, it's our time.
It is our time. So now, we make it known that we will not be quiet until our demands are met. And so that means participating in strikes. That means walking out of class. That means raising awareness, however you can do it. Because our future is being stolen from us. And if we, the kids from one of the most privileged nations in the world, are not going to stand up to do something about climate change, then who will?
We will.
All right.
Hey guys, I'm Izzy, and I'll be leading you in a chant right now. So if you guys could join in as soon as you catch on. As soon as you... Okay.
Closer.
To the microphone. People gonna rise like the water. We're gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying keep it in the ground. People gonna rise like the water. We're gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying keep it in the ground. People gonna rise like the water. We're gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying keep it in the ground.
All together now.
People gonna rise like the water. We're gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying keep it in the ground. People gonna rise like the water. We're gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying
Climate action now!
Okay, so we're going to do another chant. I'm going to say, what do we want? Climate action. When do we want it? Now. What do we want?
Climate action!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate action!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate
When do
action!
you want it?
Now!
What we're demanding from our governments today is climate justice. It's a term we use to talk about the fact that climate change is a result of the unjust systems that we have in our society, and it doesn't affect everyone equally. We're going to be talking to you about how climate justice affects communities in our country. Climate justice is a direct result of colonialism. Indigenous communities in Canada always face the harshest impacts from environmental catastrophes. Right now we're building a pipeline on unceded land, that is stolen land that was never given to us, against the consent of our Indigenous people. And Inuit people just recovering from a genocide, their communities are being affected by global warming up north in Canada.
Another thing is climate change and racial justice. So in our capitalist society, racialized people are already denied access to a number of resources. So as our collective amount of resources diminish, as climate change becomes a greater deal, then people of color will be more heavily impacted than we are standing here today. Another thing is environmental racism. A lot of countries that are not as privileged as Canada are struggling so much and have no support from a country like this. They need to have our support, but it starts with our people realizing that it's a big issue.
And the most important point of all is to recognize that the climate catastrophe we're facing today is a direct result of capitalism. Capitalism is based on the idea that resources are just there for us to extract and they'll never end. That's not the case. Large multinational corporations are profiting off of our planet's destruction right now, and our governments are failing to take action. If we're ever going to address climate change, it's important to take action directly against the institutions of capitalism.
Okay.
Also, the youth today need to be educated properly on what the causes of climate change are, how they're affecting our planet, and how we can change it. When public education is cut, fewer people get the opportunity to realize their fullest potential academically. The quality public education for all will allow for more youth people to become educated on these issues and help to combat climate change.
And finally, the cuts and the attack on our public services is related to climate change. Public services, by centralizing the services that we use, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. when we privatize our services, when we try to privatize our education and our healthcare and our transit, what we're doing is we're contributing to climate change. And that's what's happening in Ontario right now.
We're gonna do another check, guys. All right, I can do it one time, then you guys will join in. All right?
Yeah.
I said I'll do it once, and you guys will join in. All right? Yeah! All right. Climate change is not a lie. Do not let our planet die.
Climate change is not a lie. Do not let our planet die.
Climate change is
Not a lie. Do not let our planet die. Climate change is not a lie. Do not let our planet die.
Hey guys.
Hi, Izzy.
So I'm Izzy and I'm part of your Eco Council this year, and I'm going to be talking about what we can do as individuals and together to help make a change. So we know that climate change is happening. We know that it's changing the world, that species are going extinct, that people are dying, and that our home is being destroyed by us and us alone. So now that we're all concerned, what do? We have to make changes in how we live our day-to-day lives with our privilege and the world in mind. We start by talking about it, and then we take action. Every day we can carpool, use the TTC, or bike to school. Fly less, cut down on your beef and dairy consumptions. These are just little things that we can do, but when we add it up, we can help make a change. Next time you're in a grocery store, see how many things are unnecessarily wrapped in plastic. That stuff stays there forever. We see garbage in our oceans floating from decades past. We need to drill it in our heads that even when we throw something away, it's never gone. We need to change the way that we consume. Even more, we have to decide to stand up. Do what we're all doing right now, to strike, to demand that the government do better, to stand up to the corporations, that we all do better, so that we can live with hope, not fear. Because no one is doing anything. The very people that we as civilians trust and expect to take care of us and have our best interests at heart are not doing anything for us. They're the very ones killing our planet. None of our governments or I just said that, sorry. And we all know, as educated as we are, that climate change is not a political opinion, it's a fact. Look around at everyone here. I'd say we have about 100 people. 100 corporations are the ones right now making 71% of greenhouse gas emissions. 100 corporations. Just 100 companies are threatening the health of all of us, our future, and the future of our families, our friends, and all the generations yet to come, for money and for profit. Climate change and climate justice is not an issue just for certain demographics of the world. It's a social issue that affects all of us, and it'll continue to affect all of us as long as we're living on this planet. And honestly, it doesn't look like we're going to be living anywhere else. Okay. So thank you guys for striking with us. Seriously, striking works. Peaceful protesting works. Already a number of countries in Europe have begun to change their policies and laws because they see that people care. And change only comes when we express and show that we care. This is how we're going to get our government to listen. And we won't stop until we get all the change we need for all of us to survive. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Sam.
Hi, Sam.
So here in Canada, we have even more of a responsibility towards the climate crisis. However, Canada's current government has one of the worst climate plans in the world. Our plan is said to have the same effect as Trump's. We are one of the biggest contributors to the crisis, but one of the countries doing the least about it. We must demand that our next government works with the rest of the world to climate change. The government bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline for over $4 billion and is building it on unceded, that means stolen, territory.
Invest in the TTC.
Canada forced Indigenous people onto disadvantageous land, only to later build pipelines on the same land when they found it fitting. We must fight for a government who does not allow pipelines to be built on Indigenous territory. Canada also developed a carbon tax, but it exempts oil and gas companies from 80% of their emissions. This is not a real carbon tax. We are the next generation, and we must demand a government that guarantees a future for us without famine, without natural disaster, and without extinction. We must demand a government that delivers justice to Indigenous communities and develop real policies to end the climate crisis. Thank you.
The government likes to act as though they care about climate change. They don't. They come to protests like this, as the Prime Minister is attending today, and they support us on social media. Then they go back and they block the account that's organizing this strike in Canada. We stand here today to tell our government, in Greta Thunberg's words, we understand your betrayal and we will never forgive you.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey,
That was hard.
All right, guys. This is going to be the end of the climate strike outside of Earl Haig. This group of people here, and we hope that you guys will join us going to Queen's Park. If you're interested in that, meet us right here in the next 5 minutes, and we're going to be heading down there to join their march with everyone else in Toronto. Thank you again for coming out.